Oh, we're quorum. Flooding in. Hi everyone, it's Mark here. We're just letting people come in and we'll be starting in a bit. So settle down and we'll be with you shortly. Okay, people are still joining. We're past 100, which is good. Welcome to the Don's Trust SGM. I'm going to give people a couple of minutes because we've had over 200 people register. We're over 100, which is already good for an SGM, but we'll give it a minute longer and hopefully we'll get even more. I'm assuming that everyone else is at the ladies match, but okay, well the number's reasonably stable, so I'm going to start introductions in a second. So welcome everyone to the SGM. Thank you for joining. You've got most of the board, Don's Trust board here in as panelists, and some of them will be attending as attendees too. I've had apologies from a few people, but first, actually, I'm Mark Davis, I'm the chair, so why don't people say hello? Hannah.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Edward.
Hello, everybody. Good evening.
Luke.
Hello.
Anne.
Hi, everyone.
Jane was there. Jane, you still there?
Yep, still here. Hello, everybody.
I can't see everyone else, but as well as Don's Trust board members, we have the Don's Trust treasurer, Michelle Little. Say hello, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
And then from the football club board, we have Chief Executive Joe Palmer.
Good evening, everyone.
And Financial Controller Tom Rawcliffe.
Hi, everyone.
So it's possible that I've got other Don's Trust board members on here that I just can't see. Shout hello now if you wish, otherwise I shall continue.
Hi.
Oh, Graham, sorry, I didn't see there. Great, okay. So we've had a few apologies, including from Ivor and Anna will be joining us a bit late, but I've also gotten apologies from David Grounds, the Trust Secretary, who has been unwell recently. So a few things to say. First of all, this session is being recorded and will be made available to members on Pro boards afterwards. The chat functions and the Q&A functions are both enabled. If you have a question you want to put to the board, put it on the Q&A. So use chat to chat among yourselves. You can put questions to us on the Q&A, but actually, and we'll do what we can to answer them, but please wait until the relevant agenda item because we're not going to be storing them up for later. This is a bit of an experiment. We've done an open meeting online a couple of months ago where we took questions in advance, but tonight what we didn't do in that last meeting was any voting, and we are going to do some voting online tonight, and we're going to try and answer questions that are submitted through the Q&A. So bear with us. It's a bit of an experiment. Let's hope it'll work. And I'm intending, there's three chunks, if you like. There's some just formalities we need to get out of the way, and we'll try and do them quickly. There's some members' resolutions, which can be, frankly, as quick or as long as you like, within reason. But, you know, some might need a lot more debate than others. And then really there's just discussion and Q&A. I think for these meetings to make them last longer than a couple of hours is quite difficult. So we don't have a set shut-off time, but let's try and be out by 9:30. When we do come to the members' resolutions, so I'll tell you more about how the voting will work when we actually come to the voting. And when it comes to the members' resolution, I'm going to ask the person who submitted the resolution to put their hand up so we can invite them in to say a few words should they so wish. So with that, I think that's everything to say in advance. So the first item is just the minutes of the previous meetings. So this is experimental voting online. We've submitted minutes, first of all, for the 9th of December AGM. Are there any questions on the 9th of December AGM minutes? So Tim, can you re-ask your question later when we get to item 10? Any questions on minutes? I don't see any. In which case, we're now going to vote to approve the 9th December AGM minutes. So hopefully you can all see that. Can you please submit your vote if you're content with the 9th of December AGM minutes? So Hannah, can you see numbers racking up?
Yes, 90% in favour.
Cool. Okay. Well, look,
with 80 something, 96 people have voted.
brilliant.
Remember, anybody, if you want to speak, you can use your raise the hand function, and then I can invite you to speak.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't say that. Okay. So now we'll move on to the 29th January Sgm minutes. So are there any questions on the those minutes? No, it doesn't look like there are any questions. So Hannah, could you kindly ask us to vote on the Sgm minutes?
Yeah, I'm just going to end the vote for the other one. That's passed. So results. And then, hang on, sorry. Continue. Sorry.
Oh.
I'm just having trouble getting my head around this way. So here we go, found it. Right, this is the January 29th minutes.
They racking up?
Yep, 85% in favour, 93
Cool.
votes so far.
Okay, so the minutes are approved. With the rest of the voting this evening, what I should say is that, so this is a poll, formally this is a poll rather than a show of hands under the Constitution, and therefore what we'll do is we will add the proxies we've received in advance to these results. We'll provisionally call them this evening if we can, but what we will actually do is confirm those results following the meeting, because we have to add in the proxies, make sure no one's voted twice, you know, in case anyone has sent in a paper proxy and then logged on here and voted. So hopefully none of the results will be close enough that it'll make any difference. But nonetheless, we'll provisionally call the results this evening and we'll confirm them. So now going on to the sort of first block of stuff, which is just, I hope some of these resolutions are pretty uncontroversial and quick. So the first one is the Struss annual report and accounts. So the background here is that we did actually put the trust accounts to you some months back. I think that was at, I can't remember if, I think it was at the AGM last December, but the audit hadn't been completed, and so what we said is we would come back to you to the extent there was anything material that came up about in the audit and give you the chance to give fresh approval. So in terms, and the reason the audit hadn't been done is the way auditors work is they start with the subsidiaries and they work their way up, and until the PLC accounts were fully finalised, they weren't willing to sign off on the trust accounts, and actually they didn't really start even looking until they'd signed off the PLC accounts. So there were lots of last minute questions about the trust accounts. The numerical changes to the trust accounts were really very minor, and we wouldn't be putting this to fresh approval if it was just a question of the small differences in numbers. But there were something that is potentially material is that although the auditors didn't qualify the accounts, they did ask for the inclusion of some statements related to the effects of COVID, and I suspect that statements about COVID in financial statements will become quite common for a lot of companies for the time being. And the particular issue they raised was that the Struss bond, which is money that we have borrowed from members and on lent to the club, there's quite a lot of money under that bond that has reached its maturity date and was repayable on demand. And the auditors wanted us to note the risk that because of COVID, if we'd suddenly said to the club, pay us all the money that is now theoretically due, if all the members if all the bondholders whose bonds were due asked for instant repayment, then there was uncertain whether the club would be able to honour that, and they wanted that to be reflected in the narrative of the accounts. Now, the first thing to say is bondholders hadn't been clamouring for instant repayment on those bonds, and actually, second thing to say is that Michelle, our treasurer, has subsequently been going out to the Struss bondholders. Sorry, for background, this is the Struss bond that was issued years and years ago. This is not the Plough Lane bond. And asked those whose bonds have matured whether they would extend them to a further period. So actually, the amount that is theoretically repayable instantly is now much, much smaller anyway. So we were content at the time that we were a going concern. Nonetheless, we remain content with that situation, all the more so because of the smaller amount that is repayable at short notice. But nonetheless, since there is that narrative in the accounts that wasn't previously there, we thought we would honour what we said when we got your approval to the Struss accounts, was to seek fresh approval. So are there any questions on that resolution? So if there are, so Charlie Talbot has asked, do we know, are we confident that we'll be able to sign off and have the audit on track for this year's account so these delays, etc., don't occur next time, especially given COVID delays? So the first thing to say, Charlie, is that Michelle has been making fantastic progress on the this year's accounts, but as I say, there is a sort of sequence in which they work their way through from the subsidiaries upward chain. So Tom, how are you doing time-wise on the subsidiary and PLC accounts? And then Michelle, maybe you'd like to say a word.
Yeah, so on the numbers side, last year we were absolutely fine on the numbers. They didn't move from November onwards. We were waiting for clarity over the going concern and the funding of the stadium. and the PLC accounts got signed off in advance of the Don's Trust accounts, and there is no note on the going concern, no emphasis of matter in those accounts. This year we're right on schedule, which is good. So we've drafted all the accounts, got all the supporting schedules, and I think I'll speak for yourself, Michelle, where we're both in a position where we're quite comfortable that we've got all the information we need in advance of them starting the audit. So I think we're in a good place with that. Famous last word, you never know quite what the auditors will uncover, but for now we've done everything we can possibly do at this stage.
Okay, and Michelle, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Tom and I have been working hand in hand. All the intercompanies worked out, and all the figures for the Plough Lane bond and the Don's Trust bonds are in good shape. So
Great.
you can't guarantee with the auditors they won't pick something up, but I think we're as prepared as we can be.
Okay.
Mark, there's Ian Templeton has his hand raised. Is it okay to let him talk?
Sorry, who does?
Ian Templeman, sorry.
Ian, go for it.
Ian, you're on mute if you wanted to speak.
Okay, well, Ian, you do put an answer in a question in the Q&A if you're having difficulty. Just to say also that, as you know, annual accounts in the ordinary course get approved at the annual general meeting, and we have now got a date for the annual general meeting of 17th December. Okay, so I can't see any further. We'll see when the next vote comes up. I don't quite know what that means, Chris. So I'm now going to invite us all to vote on Resolution 1, which is to reapprove the Society's annual report and accounts for the year ended 30th of June 2019. So Hannah, can you open that one?
Stuart Young now has his hand raised. I'm going to see if this works. Oh no, he's put his hand down. People, yeah.
Okay, have lots of people voted now, Hannah? You've gone on mute now, Hannah.
Yeah, 93% passed, 100 votes.
Okay, so that's fine. So as I said earlier, because of proxies and all that, these are provisional, but it looks like that's passed, and it looks like people are getting the hang of the online voting, which is great. So we now move on to the item related to the PLC annual report and accounts, where, so don't vote just yet, sorry, Hannah. So, we were going to get approval for the PLC accounts at a Don's Trust SGM, which was going to be held the same night as the PLC AGM on the 19th of March. Because of COVID, what you may remember we did was we cancelled the Don's Trust SGM, but we had to proceed with the PLC AGM, which we sort of did in with a tiny number of people there so as to be COVID compliant. I think we had 6 people at the PLC AGM, and the Don's Trust did vote in favour of approving the PLC accounts. And actually we did actually discuss the PLC accounts with you, albeit that they were submitted quite late for, I think it was the January meeting. So we have previously answered questions about the accounts, and we did, in the circumstances, vote in favour of approving accounts, but nonetheless we are allowing a protest vote if that's, in case that's what people want. So this is an opportunity, first of all, to ask any questions about the 2019 AFCW PLC accounts, or about what we did. So if there are any questions, raise them now in the Q&A. I can't see any questions. So I'm now going to go to invite people to vote on the PLC accounts. So resolution 2 is to ratify the Trust's vote in favour of approving the AFCW PLC annual report and accounts at the AFCW PLC AGM held on 19th March 2020. So what you're doing is ratifying the fact that we did vote in favour of those. If you could vote now. Are those coming through, Hannah?
Yeah. 107 votes, 95% in favour.
Okay, fine, thank you. So now we move on to the next agenda item, which is to do with PLC directors. So at what we did, this is carried forward from the meeting in January, where, as you know, the PLC puts its directors to, has to get approval for its directors on a rotating basis, and we in turn put that to trust members to get approval to how to vote for the PLC directors. It was pointed out at the meeting that we put it to that what we'd done was inadvertently contrary to what we'd talked about the previous year, which was that we had put them to you as a block, and actually people wanted the opportunity to vote one by one for the directors concerned. So we undertook back in January to come back to you and put that on a one by one basis at the March SGM. But the March SGM, as I said earlier, was cancelled and the PLC AGM went ahead. So we did approve, we cast the trust votes in favour, the board cast the trust votes in favour of the directors at the AGM, but we said we would come back to you afterwards retrospectively, a bit like we just did with the accounts, and get your approval. If you do not approve particular directors or all or any of the directors, then we'll have to take action accordingly because we have the ability to remove directors too. So are there any questions before we start turning to the individual directors, because we will do them one by one? Are there any questions about that? So do put your any questions about that in the Q&A function. I'll just give that a second. Okay, so there aren't any questions yet. I'm going to go one by one through them, but you have the opportunity to ask. Let's not do vote question, vote question, vote question about individual candidates. Are there any questions in relation to the candidates? You have a statement that we invited those people to put forward some months ago, so hopefully speak for themselves. Some of those people will be online. I'm not sure if 100% of them are online. I can't tell. I can't see any questions, so I'm now going to start inviting questions on individual candidates. So resolution 3 is for Mick Buckley. Mick Buckley, Hannah, if you could.
Sorry, there's just one question that's come in.
Oh, okay.
You might want to answer while I just launch that.
So the question from Mark Lewis, is Anna staying on the PLC board as she's stepping down from the Donstrust board? The answer is no, she'll come off the PLC board. Okay, so there's a vote on Mick. And sorry, just to say further. So that that will happen. So in theory, we should instantaneously replace Anna with another Don's Trust board member, so as to preserve the majority. That doesn't always happen instantaneously, but basically, yeah, once they're no longer on the Don's Trust board and they're the Don's Trust nominee, they come off the PLC board and we replace them. Okay, so we got votes for Mick.
Yeah, 70, well, hang on, they're still coming in, but in favour 74%, it's switching between 74 and 75. How much is it to pass again?
So, sorry, thank you. All the votes we've done so far, and all of these are just on a simple majority. All these votes on directors, simple majority. When we get to the members' resolution, it becomes a 2/3 majority. So,
Okay, so this is a majority in favour.
okay, all right. So we shall move on. So the next person is Anna Kingsley. So Anna, as Mark just pointed out, will only be on it until the AGM, but she is on it. So if you could vote for or against Anna. Okay.
There's just some, I hope it's okay that I say, but there's some stuff in the chat around, so Rob Crane has written and Charlie Talbot has asked that it be minuted, that he's doesn't want to make a big thing, but not comfortable voting for PLC directors on an individual basis. We're giving them a personal democratic mandate at a time when we don't quite know for sure what role we want the PLC board to play, and the risk is that we accidentally determine the Don's Trust democratic nature. I'll be abstaining.
Okay, so we can record that, but so just to say that if you've got something you want, the chat function is mainly for people to talk among themselves, so well spotted, but if you could put things like that on the Q&A, that would be appreciated. That's noted. I mean, the point we have described in this paper, I think, is what the current function of the PLC board is, and the PLC board is essentially an advisory board, providing primarily commercial advice to the board, both the Don's Trust board upwards to the Don's Trust board and also downwards to the football club board. Okay, so the next one, I've lost the plot, is after we've done Anna, so the next one is Edward Leake. So Anna, if you could put that up. Most people voted?
Yeah.
Cool. How's that looking?
56% in favour, so that would have passed.
Okay. Well, sorry, subject to the proxies as well, which will count afterwards.
Yeah.
The next one is Jane Lonsdale. Oh, we've got something in chat. Are there proxy votes for the PLC directors? Yes, Nigel, we've received some proxy votes and we'll add those into the results and confirm them over the coming days. And we haven't said passed. You may not have been on the line earlier, Nigel. We're just calling provisionally on the basis of what we've seen on screen, but we have a process to check that there isn't double voting, etc., from people who voted online. And so we will be confirming these over the coming days. Did we?
Yeah, that's all.
Fine. Okay. Thank you. All right. So that's that resolution out of the way. So now we're sort of onto the second block of the evening, where we're on to the members' resolutions. So as a reminder, members' resolutions are resolutions that you, the membership, send in to us in advance of the meetings to vote on. One of these, I think it's just one of these, is left over from an SGM that didn't happen, or actually I think it was carried over a couple of times. And the rest of these were received a few weeks ago. Members' resolutions, according to the rules, require 2/3 to vote in favour. So the first members' resolution.
Sorry, Mark. I don't think we did Joe's vote.
Yeah, no. So that's right. We haven't put Joe to the vote, and the reason is that Joe's role as chief executive requires him to be on the PLC board, and so we took it, and we, the Struss board, appointed Joe to chief executive, and therefore we took the view that we, the board, were empowered and indeed duty bound to vote in favour of Joe without putting that to the membership. So that's why, and that was explained in the paper. And so there you go. And questions come and gone, but we will. I think I can't remember who it was. Lauren, we didn't put Joe on the agenda. I don't understand the question, Laura. Resolution 7. Oh, good. We did put it on. That's a mistake. We didn't mean to. Well, sorry, in that case. How did that happen? Sorry, we did put it on the agenda. You're absolutely right. We meant not to. But since we did, we will. So to clarify, so thank you for pointing that out. So first of all the votes we've been voting for so far come with the board's recommendation in favour, and this one is no exception. Yes, our club chief executive, Joe Palmer, to be on the PLC board, and thank you for pointing that out, and apologies for a bit of a mistake there. So could you put that up, please, Hannah? And Niall, we'll, as I said, we'll top them all up after the event and declare it. The ones I seem to remember, 56% for Ed is what I saw from Hannah, but we will count that up and together with proxies. Oh, sorry, what we said, just to clarify, is that we were looking for the membership to support us in our appointment of Joe without requiring a personal statement from Joe. That's what we did. Sorry, I thought we weren't putting it to vote, but we just said we didn't ask him to provide a statement. Is that one done?
Yeah,
Hannah?
pretty much.
Okay. Do you want to tell us what that looked like?
94% in favour.
Cool. Okay, all right. So now we move on to members' resolutions, and these are, as I said, 2/3 majority according to our rules. So the first one is regarding Milton Keynes. I'll read the resolution. We believe it's essential for the guardians of the football club, PLC, Football Club Board and Don's Trust Board to respect the historical position of fans and the club with regard to any interaction outside of absolute necessity with MK, and would like that clarified so there is no ambiguity. Now, Xavier Wiggins proposed this, but I understand that Xavier can't be with us tonight, but he's asked Charlie Talbot to speak. So Charlie, I think you need to raise your hands, so Hannah can let you speak. So if Charlie is there, can you put your hand up, please?
I have done. Yeah, does that work? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Xavier actually submitted this. This is a motion that I think missed a deadline by a couple of hours 2 meetings ago, and then somehow got missed off the agenda for the next one. So it comes from quite an old time, but he just wanted to continue to get the clarification. I think you've explained this already in the blurb around it, but there were 2 parts to it. Xavier's withdrawn the other part, which essentially asked for a bit of an update and suggested that he felt, and some fans felt, like we're still pandering rather to calling them by the name of the club they insist on and so on while the mediation is going on. Your answer talks about or your recommendation talks about the non-disclosure part of that mediation. So in the meantime, Xavier just wanted it clarified that only one of our officials goes into the tunnel area. I think that's David Charles, because it's a requirement, and nobody else does. And again, I think your blurb already suggests that this has been restated as club policy. So in that sense, I think most of what he's asked for in it is probably in train of being done. But that's the background to why this is suddenly back on the agenda, because this is actually a motion was intended to be a motion, I think, from 2 meetings ago. So as Xavier, the volunteer army of DLAG people, I just thought I'd sit in and pass that on for him.
Okay, so are there any questions on that? So you hopefully you've seen our answer, and as restated, I think the board is recommending in favour of this resolution. So if there are no questions on that, Hannah, can you open the vote on it?
Yeah, that's open now.
Are we good?
Yeah. Majority are in favour, currently at 84%.
Okay, so
but as we've said, we're going to publish all of the results after the meeting to all members, and won't have officially passed any of them until proxy votes are counted.
Yeah, and just sorry, Hannah, you just said the majority. Just a reminder, it's about 2/3 majority in this case. But
yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which is a members' resolution. Actually, it's submitted by Charlie again. Let me just read it and then ask Charlie to speak a few words to it. So this is resolution 9. This resolution requests the Don's Trust Board to review previous agendas and minutes to list all resolutions requisitioned by members and brought to general meetings of all forms since the Society was created in 2002, indicating what course of action the board of the Society recommended to members in each case. So Charlie, if you're still there, talk to us.
Yeah, hi, hello. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. As it says, in the last couple of years, virtually every member's resolution has been recommended to be voted against by the board, which doesn't seem very encouraging for bringing ideas from the floor. I know in your follow-up as well as, and I think this would be a helpful repository to have, your follow-up also talks about how it might be an idea to discuss these resolutions with the board in advance, which is probably true, but it's also a problem of our constitution that anything is set in stone. So if nothing can be amended during the meeting itself, which it can't under our constitution, even with a friendly amendment, and because of the 2/3 barrier, it remains an issue that anything that the board don't want to happen that's brought to them by the members has a very, very high bar to clear. So that was really the point of the motion, was to get a picture of what's happened to get us to this point. And I think your recommendation probably makes sense in the future for how motions could be discussed in advance, but that also seems slightly democratically lacking to have to go and have essentially a kind of horse trading conversation with the secretary first. That doesn't seem an ideal solution either. But
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear.
So, I mean, there is due to be a constitutional review so this is something that could be looked at as part of that. Just bear in mind that people cast proxies in advance of the meeting, so that would need some thought as to how proxies are dealt with. Nonetheless, I would say I strongly encourage members to be early with members' resolutions if they possibly can, because that does allow, and actually with some of the resolutions that we received this time around, I think I received some of them like a morning before the cutoff, and I was at work and I did just quickly have time to glance at one of them and say, can't you just tweak it, because and the person did tweak it, and we couldn't have done something otherwise. So it really does help if you send it in early, and then we can help you to tweak it to make it allowable. I mean, actually what I would say is that from memory, the rules say that we must not accept members' resolutions that go against our legal or contractual obligations or something. And actually at times have actually, to be fair, taken resolutions where we could have just ruled them out of hand anyway. Nonetheless, all fair points. I think in terms of what the resolution itself says, yes, it is highly desirable for us to have a better record of an at-a-glance record of previous members' resolutions. And there was I can't remember what it is, some topic recently that we board members were trying to remember ourselves, whether it had been the subject of a member's resolution. So all highly desirable. At the moment, some of the Sgm minutes are down because of some reconfiguring of how they're stored on the system. So this resolution, which is to go through and count them all, we're in favour of it. It won't happen instantly because David needs to do some rewiring in the background to hook up the Sgm resolutions again. But a polite suggestion that people might like to volunteer to undertake this task for us once they are online again, because for all these resolutions there's work to make them happen. So anyway, this resolution is the board is recommending in favour. There are some questions. So when will the constitutional review be completed? I don't know. Is Tim on the line? It hasn't got very far, I think, is the honest answer to that question.
Tim is online.
I'm here, Mark.
Go on.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, it was only about a week ago when I was mandated to start the initial consideration of this. My earliest thoughts, and I invite members to contribute to this, is that we look at easy wins, because there are some essentials such as changing the address of the Duns Trust and amending the restricted action that relates to our stadium. So we go for those initially. It will be, I think, my recommendation. I'll do a full read through and try and pick out others, such as there is a point in the Constitution where there is nothing against it, so we'll remove that. But then a longer review of the Constitution, I think, will take some substantial planning. Again, I invite volunteers to join me in that, and I think that would take the best part of a year to come up with some solid changes to bring the Constitution to where it should be.
Thanks for that, Tim. So then we've had I think a suggestion from Kim Hart. Can we have can we tweak after the closing date? So the thing I'd say, Kim, to that, I mean, fine, all these things can be considered, but actually, so we have to send these papers out in advance of the meeting, a couple of weeks in advance, and actually the window for the board to consider members' resolutions and make a recommendation is actually quite short as it is already. And, you know, I had to stop various things I was doing, given the number of members' resolutions, to make that happen this time. So that's easier said than done. And indeed, there's one member's resolution where we haven't even put a recommendation because we just timed out. So Rob, has a volunteer come forward to take on this task of compiling the previous votes? I think you mean the answer is not yet, but thank you for answering that. And then Nigel, can we have a timeline presented at the next Sgm, if not before? That's a suggestion that I'll allow Tim to respond to consider. Okay, I'd now like to and Sidi, I don't know what you, hence no people affected by voting are administrating and only Hannah administrating.
I think that's, hang on, Sarah, I think that's a question around anonymous voting. Hence no people affected by voting. Yeah, so basically there was a question raised and I typed an answer around whether it's anonymous voting. It is anonymous, as in we won't publish the results of who's voted, but it will be possible for myself to see whether the people who've put the resolutions forward have voted or not. That's right, isn't it, Mark?
Proxies.
Okay, now can people hear me because my internet has gone dodgy? How can I turn off my camera? Okay, I'm hoping people can hear me now. Hannah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there was one more question, wasn't there, which was sorry, I've now lost. Hannah, can you just let me know whether there was another question?
Yeah, Sean Fox, could we publish a set of dates for meetings and deadlines for motions for each calendar year? This would help. Why cannot we have a motion published and an amendments deadline?
So, Sean, excellent point. And sorry, we mean to do that every year. Yes, we should do that. Apologies. And as just a reminder, I have given the date of the AGM, which is the 17th of December. I think that means the cutoff for members' resolutions would be the 18th of November, I think, but I think it's 30 days in advance. Okay, can we go to the voting on this one, please? So this is about publication of how resolutions in advance, and the board recommends yes in favour. How's that doing, Hannah?
Yeah, nearly everybody seems to have voted, and it's 87% in favour.
Okay, thank you. So then the next one is a resolution about Don's Trust board elections that was submitted by Lou Carton-Kelly. I'll read it first. To introduce and encourage a policy within the Don's Trust board and the club whereby members of the Don's Trust board, the AFCW PLC board and senior club officials do not propose potential Don's Trust board election candidates. Is Lou online?
I don't know, but Peter Bowles has got his hand raised, so I'm just going to allow him.
Sorry, it was Peter Bowles. Sorry, Peter, you did it, not Lou. Lou seconded it.
Yes.
So,
hello. Hope everyone can hear me. Yes. So the resolution is to introduce and encourage a policy within the Don's Trust board and the club whereby members of the Don's Trust board, the AFCW PLC board and senior club officials do not propose potential Don's Trust board election candidates. So there's a little explanation on the paper that went out, but basically it occurred to me to us that having a candidate proposed by someone who's already on the DTB or is a club official, it might mean that members take it on trust that the candidate is the one that they want to support, and they might be a little less looking at what they actually say and think. Also, if we think of the Don's Trust board as having an overseeing role over everything else, then if candidates are being proposed by the people who they are overseeing, then it kind of feels like that could be a bit of a sort of a conflict of interest, and it could be unnecessarily cliquey. And the third thing is that it just didn't seem to be a very hard thing for prospective candidates if they want to get nominations from outside of the DTB and the club. It shouldn't be a difficult bar to jump, and so we didn't think this was a very big thing to ask. Yeah, so this isn't the ESG commented that this is making a suggestion rather than amending the constitution. I'll take this opportunity to say that I think that we make it too hard to amend the constitution, and that's overdue, but I know other people are working on that. So I commend this resolution to the members. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but there we are.
okay, so thank you, Peter. So, I mean,
sorry, John Dolan, who stood down as the chair of the ESG, wanted to speak, if that's okay.
Okay. John, you're on mute.
I've just pressed on mute, so can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Right. Just to say that as far as club officials and senior club people are concerned, and the Don's Trust Board Secretary, they were struck out from being proposers in the rules from last year. Also last year we introduced a rule that said you couldn't nominate more than one person. So it's just to say that things have been moving in this direction. So the main difference between what was already happening before I stood down is the prohibition on Don's Trust board members. The other elements of it had already been included in the rules. That's basically it.
Okay, thank you for that, John. So, so there are a variety of views among the board on this particular topic, and sort of there are some arguments in favour of the resolution and arguments against the resolution in the paper you've received. And on this occasion, so I won't, unless we had somebody speaking for, somebody speaking against from the board, I think it's just probably better that you read what the paper says and make your own minds up, because actually we're not making a recommendation on this topic. It's for you to say, and it's for us board members to vote with our own conscience on it. However, because we're voting with our own conscience on it, what I've said is that those people who've given a proxy to the chair on this, and I haven't declared how I'm voting on it, those will be counted as an abstention. So are there any questions about this before we put it to the vote? I can't see any. In that case, so resolution 10, to introduce and encourage a policy within the Dons Trust board and club whereby members of the Dons Trust board, PLC board and senior club officials do not propose potential Dons Trust board election candidates. So if you vote in favour, then you're saying we shouldn't propose candidates. If you vote against, you're saying we shouldn't be prevented from doing so. So Hannah, do you want to put that?
Yeah. Charlie's got a question about the voting and whether an abstention counts as 2/3 required.
Charlie, I can't remember. This has come up before. As I said earlier, the Secretary is ill today, so good point. We'll bear that in mind when it comes to. We'll have to ask Secretary. I just can't remember.
I should note that we should publish exactly how the voting has taken place tonight after publish the results and publish how it's taken place after the meeting.
Charlie, sorry, I just don't know. I need the Secretary. I mean, it isn't necessarily a huge number we're talking about. So, and we did say in advance that proxies would be treated that way. Hannah, how's that shaping up?
Most people seem to have voted 70% in favour.
That's interesting. That'll be quite close, depending on what the proxies said. Okay. All right. Thank you. And then we have members' resolution re-protecting ownership of the stadium. So the first was submitted by Peter Bowles. So this is in two parts, and we will vote on them. And Hannah, presumably we will get raw numbers of votes, won't we? Not just percentages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is in two parts and will be voted on in two parts. So I'll read them both, and then Peter, it's up to you whether we discuss them together or in two parts. But the first one, Resolution 11A, to initiate the process of updating the Dons Trust constitution such that the restricted action protections which formerly applied to the stadium at Kings Meadow are applied to the Plough Lane Stadium as soon as possible. Since it may take time for these actions to be carried out, the Dons Trust Board must at a minimum produce the plan for how and when this will be carried out by the time of the next general meeting. So that's one resolution. And then the second one, Resolution 11B, until the actions of the previous one have been completed, to instruct the Dons Trust Board to use its controlling interest in AFCW plc to ensure that the ownership of the stadium at Plough Lane remains entirely within AFCW plc or a wholly owned subsidiary, unless approval is received from a Dons Trust meeting. So, Peter, do you want to say something about those?
Okay, sorry, I started and then I got a little notification telling me that I needed to unmute. So I'd have thought this would be pretty straightforward. You know, obviously, we want to stay as the owners of our stadium forever. So Resolution 11A is about updating the Constitution and figuring out how to put the restricted action in place. Resolution B was intended to just say, oh, and until that's done, don't sell the stadium, because that seemed like quite an important thing. Now, I see from the Don's Trust Board's response to the Part B that we have potentially fallen foul of the inability to amend a resolution. So I believe that the word entirety entirely to do with way leaves and stuff for where you've got to let BT install a fibre optic cable or something may be contentious, but I would say that if you give someone permission to dig a trench through your land, it's still your land. It's still our stadium. So I'm not sure I find the Don's Trust Board's response to be completely compelling on that, but up to the members to decide. I hope everyone's read it, because I probably haven't read it all out.
Okay.
That's all from me.
Thanks, Peter. So, so the Don Trust Board's position on this is, so first of all, yes, of course, none of us want to get rid of the stadium that we fought so hard to get, and it should be part of the restricted action procedure, and in due course, and we need to get that restricted action right, and we'll need Tim and his group to consider, you know, is that part of the general update of the Constitution? Is that a standalone update? Amending the restricted actions is quite a complex process. Sorry, I'm really sorry, I haven't explained. I suspect most of you know what I mean by a restricted action, but there's no reason why people should know what I mean by restricted action. So a restricted action is a set of things that we have set out in our rules that the board cannot do and cannot permit to be done unless we go to our members and get a supermajority in favour. And just what the procedure is and just how large a majority is required depends on the category of the restricted action. But selling our old stadium was a category A restricted action, which meant we had to get a particularly large majority, and we had to do it twice, and we did do it actually, in order to sell Kings Meadow. So sorry, I should have explained that earlier. So this resolution is saying, yeah, we're going to do the same, but we need to get the resolution right. We need to fit it in with how we're amending the Constitution, because to amend the restricted actions in the Constitution is itself a restricted action, so it's quite a cumbersome process. So we'll have to think that through. But then the further thing is that we should do that once we can fulfill it, and there are various things we have done and will do that would fall foul of the of for example what Peter has written. So we had given a mortgage over the stadium to our development lender, MSP Capital, in order to borrow against the stadium to build it. So that fetters our ownership of the stadium, because we have given a third party rights over it, and we will have to refinance that loan within 18 months of first drawdown, and we need to make sure that we're able to do that. The second thing is we've done several things on the ownership. So for instance, we've given a lease over a tiny bit of the stadium where an electricity substation will be located. This is nothing to do with the electricity substation next door to the stadium. This is about a substation for the stadium that our utility provider will have a lease over a little bit of land within the stadium in order to provide us electricity. And we're going to swap, we're going to sort of neaten the edges of our stadium. So the boundary with the electricity substation next door, we're going to give them a little slithers of land, and they're going to give us little slithers of land. And so we are going to dispose of little slithers of land and acquire little slithers of land. So in terms of doing that, we are going to do those things. We need to get on with it, and therefore, clearly, we have no intention to get rid of the stadium, but there are certain things we're going to need to do in order just to regularise the stadium project before we bring you a resolution to introduce a restricted action so that we can't get rid of the stadium. So that is why we are saying yes to the first part of the resolution, which is about bringing forward a restricted action, and to the extent it can't be by the time of the next general meeting, tell you what our plans are for that. But we are recommending against the second part of the resolution because there are things that we are definitely planning to do, that minor things, but still things that fall foul of that resolution, and we don't want any question over our legal ability to do those things that we are doing. So there are some questions. So Laurent's asked for a comfort break. So number one, Laurent, you're free to go for a comfort break at any time you choose, but I suggest that to the extent that people want one, let's just get to the end of the members' resolutions, and then maybe then that's the logical time to do it. So another one from Laurent, the board gave reasons why they think we cannot implement 11B. However, others have suggested, now as a question, these reasons listed are just charges against the stadium rather than something that stops us implementing 11B. So no, that's not correct. We are actually swapping bits of land with UK Power Networks. That isn't a charge. That is getting rid of a slither of the stadium and acquiring some land to add to the stadium. And the first bit of those isn't a charge, it is a disposal. So hope I've answered that question. So, are there any other questions? Otherwise, we will vote on the first part. And the first part is about, so let me read that to you. To initiate the process of updating the Dons Trust constitution such that restricted action protections which formerly applied to the stadium at Kingsmeadow are applied to the Plough Lane Stadium as soon as possible. Since it may take time for these actions to be carried out, the Dons Trust board must at a minimum produce a plan for how and when this will be carried out by the time of the next general meeting. So the board is recommending that you vote in favour of resolution 11A. So Hannah, if you could put that up. How are we doing?
Almost all votes are in and 98% in favour.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on to 11B. Until the actions of Resolution 11A have been completed, to instruct the Dons Trust Board to use its controlling interest in AFCW plc to ensure that the ownership of the stadium at Plough Lane remains entirely within AFCW plc or a wholly owned subsidiary unless approval is received from a Dons Trust meeting. And the board is recommending that you vote against resolution 11B for the reasons I have outlined. So could you put that one up? How are we doing?
Most of the votes are coming in and it's not clear cut. 42% are in favour, 39% no, against, 19% abstain.
Okay. Fine. So that brings us on to, so sorry, just to be clear, we'll top that up with the proxies and declare that in a few days' time. So then the final, I think it is, members' resolution is from Peter Bowles, and it's resolution 12 to apply the same standards of transparency to AFCW PLC board meetings as currently exist for Don's Trust board meetings, i.e. publish meeting dates, summaries, attendances, minutes, redacted only where absolutely necessary, and recorded votes with the names of those voting, and to make this retrospective for a minimum of the past 24 months. Peter, what would you like to say?
There we are. I would like to say, yes, this is, when we set up the PLC, it was, I maintain it was mostly in order to raise the money to buy Kings Meadow, and that has largely been its purpose, to be a way for people to shove money into the club so that we could buy things. But certainly from about this time last year, it seemed like the nature of the PLC was shifting somewhat, and given that there's sort of a ambiguity about our structure, and I know that there are processes underway to review our structure and all of that sort of thing, it just seemed to us to be a good idea to have have some transparency there in what the PLC has been doing. Apart from anything else, it would give context as we think about what we think the PLC should be doing, and how hopefully we can reorder our various kind of boards and ownership structures in order to make sure that we're a totally awesome organisation that we all want to be.
Fine. Okay. So so in short, the Don's Trust board has recommended in favour of this resolution, and so I don't have a lot to add, to be honest. Are there any questions on that? And sorry, just to say that under item 10, I think people might want to just talk, people will have heard about a governance review process, so we might come onto that under that item. Are there any questions on this? Failing which, shall we move to...
Mike Howard's got his hand up.
Mike who?
Mike Howard.
Mike.
I don't know whether he wanted to speak.
He's on mute.
Possibly not.
No. Okay. All right. Well, look, I'm going to put that to the vote now.
No, sorry, you're not. I haven't launched that poll. I was using the proxy form, and this isn't in the proxy form.
Oh, really?
Mm.
That's weird. Okay. So what? There's no way of. What I suggest. Sorry, that is a mistake. That's weird. Let me just check that. What was that? Resolution 12. Is that right? So I've been sent the proxies by the secretary. Oh, you're right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, Peter, can I suggest that you withdraw the resolution on the basis of an undertaking from the board to do that? Would that work?
I think so. If I think if we can have a timescale for doing it, then that would be good. It's a shame it didn't get to the proxy.
Okay,
Get on the
so
proxy form 'cause it's fun.
okay, well, given that the board has recommended in favour, I don't think I need a board vote to. I don't think I need to put it to the vote of the board to say that we'll undertake to do it, and we'll undertake to do it in advance of, I suggest, the AGM. I don't see any board members scowling at me, but no more so than usual. Okay, so that's what I propose we do. Perhaps it could be added to the AGM. Undertake to do it in time for the next PLC meeting. That's in a couple of weeks, Nigel, and I don't particularly see the relevance of the timing of the next PLC meeting. We'll do it by the PLC AGM. So we'll do it. Okay, all right. In that case, thank you, and apologies that that wasn't on the proxy form. I don't know how that happened. Now, Laurent has asked to go for a comfort break. I suggest we have a 3-minute comfort break, so Laurent and anyone else can relieve themselves, and then we will resume, and the next part of the meeting will be much more informal. Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. I was hoping to turn my camera on again. Now my connection seems to be, oh, there it is. Right, welcome back. So I'm taking it you're all duly relieved. So the next bit is much more informal. We've done all the formal bit of the meeting. So this is really just a chance to update you on stuff going on. I've put a few suggested items down in the agenda, but they're not necessarily, some of them will be very, very brief. And it's the opportunity for you to ask us about stuff that's going on. So the first thing I've suggested we brief you on is say something about the 2021 season to date. And with no further ado, can I introduce our club chief executive, Joe Palmer.
Thanks, Mark. Evening, everyone. Yeah, so obviously we're now into the season. 3 games, 3 league games in. The season having kicked off over a month later than scheduled due to the issues with COVID over the summer and spring. I'd say it's been quite happy with the start. I had obviously 2 quite tricky games to promoted teams. There is always the ability to slip up in those games, but I think we were finding our feet, and I think we managed those games okay. Obviously the Plymouth one was a little bit disappointing, but again, learning, particularly when you've got new players in the squad. But that we're unbeaten, and hope that we will progress. I certainly like what I'm seeing at the moment. So yeah, things are very positive. The mood in the first team camp is very good, very strong, very positive, and very hopeful of where the season can go. So obviously in terms of players, we made 5 new signings in Che, Ollie, Alex, Ethan, and Dan. We've added 4 loans to the squad. So Connell Truman in goal, Ryan Longman up front, Jaakko Oksanen, and of course bringing back Steve Seddon as well, which I think has been quite popular amongst everybody. Certainly was with me, and yeah, it was quite a challenge getting that over the line, but I'm really pleased that we did. It's great to have him back. And also, we've also provided new contracts, new pro contracts to some of our academy graduates and scholars in the form of Zach Robinson, Hussein Beeler, Elliot Bolton, and Jack Curry. So yeah, things are moving well. A lot of our younger players we're looking to get them out on loan to get experience. Obviously, a little bit tricky at the moment because there's still a lot of uncertainty about what could happen with in the National League, where obviously they are incredibly dependent on fans in the stadium, and that's something that we are currently facing. Obviously, we were looking towards having 1,000 people or being allowed up to 1,000 people within the stadium from the 1st of October. Then obviously as the second wave has hit, that's sort of been pushed back. Obviously they were suggesting into the new year, but there is a lot of positive, or we hope positive discussions taking place with clubs and local MPs lobbying the government to try and bring that forward. I know there's been quite a bit of discussion, but certainly possibly even as soon as sort of towards the end of November, maybe that's what's being pushed, and we remain hopeful that that is the case, and that we can start to get people into the stadium. You'll obviously have seen from my report update yesterday that things are going well in terms of, Mark will come to this in a minute, but things are going well in terms of our paperwork and the process, because obviously it's one thing to build the stadium, but the just as big a task is all the admin and paperwork and procedures and policy documents and operating documents that we have to produce to give us the safety certificate to enable us to play. And then that aside, which is a large piece of work, we then have to overlay that with a whole set of policies and procedures for COVID. So that has really put a huge workload, in terms of what we have to produce to give the council comfort, to give the SGSA comfort, and that's what we're working on at the moment. We have had our feedback on our COVID protocols for behind closed doors matches, and we're just updating those, and we hope by next week that we're very close to having that finalised, which means that when we do have practical completion at the end of October, that we will be able to undertake a test event fairly quickly after that date, that is effectively a dry run of a behind closed doors game. And then that would hopefully allow us to have a first behind closed doors league match against Doncaster on the 3rd of November, and that's certainly what we're targeting. It's by no means a guarantee, but that's absolutely where we're targeting at the moment. There's nothing to suggest that we won't be able to make that happen. So yeah, things are moving on. Like I said, it's not ideal, obviously, not having you guys in there. After all the work we've put into this stadium to get it ready, to not be able to see the expression on your faces when you see it, because it really is magnificent. And for the few people that have been down there and see it, has been gobsmacking. It even is every week that I go down there and see how much has progressed. It really is something to be incredibly proud of, and you guys will love it, I have no doubt. So we want to get to that stage as soon as we can, and to get you guys in there. So yeah, we're just working with doing as much as we can, but obviously the situation with COVID means that we are at its mercy to a certain extent, and that of the authorities. So we will wait and see. Obviously changes week to week, but we hope for some good news on the horizon on that front.
Okay, Joe, thank you. We've got, I think I sent you a couple of questions we received in advance, and we've also got a couple of questions on the Q&A, but just while you're preparing, you might want to look at those, but just while you're preparing for those, I don't know if Graham's still on the line, but Graham might want to, people might want the opportunity to ask questions of our manager himself. So Graham, anything you'd like to tell people about when people will get an opportunity to meet the manager?
Yes, so it's kind of hot off the press. We're firming up things as we speak, but we are looking for to do something online with Glyn and possibly Nick Dawes as well on the 15th of October at 7:30. Invites have been drafted and should go out in the next day or so. So yes, looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Okay, so Joe, I think I sent you a couple of questions we received in advance, and then there's a couple on the thing. So
yeah,
there was one about playing budget for last year. I can't remember what the other one was in retrospect.
Yeah, hang on, I'm just having a look. So the ones that are on here at the moment, how the team being tested for COVID-19 at the moment. So obviously back during the summer, they were happy to do 2 tests per week, which is not a cheap exercise. That was then downgraded to 1 test per week, particularly during pre-season training. We moved down to that. And we're now at a stage where there isn't a requirement for testing. However, given the recent spate of rises in cases amongst footballers, we are anticipating that that is going to change, and that at least 1 test per week is likely to come back. I have no doubt, though we haven't had any official guidance on that yet from the EFL. Just in terms of football, would it be possible for the women's team to play matches at Plough Lane? We're obviously having that discussion with ourselves, the DTB and the women's team. Again, it just comes down to a situation of the finances of opening the stadium. The cost to open the stadium versus what could be returned, and you know, that's something that it's difficult for myself and Tom to put a number on at the moment until we're up and fully operating. So certainly it's something that we're absolutely happy to look at, and we'd like to be able to do it. So we're monitoring that one closely and having those discussions continually with David Grounds on that. Next one. Losing questions here. Yes, so before fans are allowed in, will another test event be needed? Yes, it will. We will need to produce another protocol document, so for fans within stadiums, and you know, that's an even bigger document that we'll need to produce, and obviously our test event will need to follow that protocol. What they're suggesting is that, again, it depends on what guidance we're given, but the guidance we were given before it was downgraded to 1,000 was that we would be looking at somewhere between 20 and 30% capacity allowance, and on that basis, we would have to do a test 50% of that. So you're talking about a test event of about 1,200 people. And following that, we would then hope to get the safety certificate to be able to have crowds in at that amount. So, well, the higher amount. So, yes, we will have to do another one. It will take a lot of work, but obviously we've got a bit of time on that. And the thing at the moment is absolutely making sure that we do get the test event right from home closed doors, so that we absolutely can start playing there. We've got a lovely pitch that's ready to be played on, and the players are very keen to play on it. So it's hopefully going to be marked up within the next week or two. The engineer will come down and mark it up properly. We'll get the goals up, and then hopefully Glyn's boys can start training on it from about the middle of the month, just to get used to it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hang on, where are we? Can arrangements be made for season ticket holders to visit the stadium to see their seat before November 3rd? I think before November 3rd will be quite difficult. I think we've got a greater chance to be able to do that post November 3rd, because obviously it's still a building site and we still have construction teams on there, and there are, you know, significant safety requirements that we need to go through, so it would make it logistically very difficult. But certainly once we're finished, we are going to be exploring the opportunity of potentially, you know, getting groups down and maybe doing tours. There is, of course, a possibility that we may be able to open the pub and the shop. We certainly hope we'll be able to. So there will be the opportunity to get close to the ground, and if we can, to do some limited group visits into the stadium, you know, every day if it needs be, to allow fans to come in and experience the stadium. So certainly we will be looking at that. Where are we going? So there's a question here: any update on the numbers of applications for the 3 job roles advertised? Well, so for the marketing assistant, there was over 500, so it's quite a task to go through that. I wouldn't say all of them were particularly relevant, but yeah, Claudia and Anita are sort of trawling through those, and I've got a number to have a look at through there. In terms of the head groundsman role, I've seen 5 so far. There may be some more, but I've not had a chance to look at that. And the revenue controller role we've just put on hold now for the time being, obviously because of the latest announcement, and not being able to have the fans there, given that their role is mainly the commercialisation when fans are in the stadium. So that one's just on hold for the time being, but we certainly will look to bring that back in. So are they self-isolating? I'm guessing, Kim, that you're referring to the players there. No, well, they will be self-isolating if they have a positive test, but obviously not at the moment. They're not. What revenue streams are we looking at whilst we have no attendance? It's a good question. It's very difficult. Obviously, iFollow gives a certain amount of revenue opportunity. We are still pursuing commercial opportunities. There's a number of commercial sponsors who are looking to come on board, because obviously we're still able to televise the game, so there is a certain amount of value for sponsors, and that is something that we're still looking to do. We obviously, if we are able to open up the pub, we will certainly be looking at that, and also the club shop as well. We see it as a great opportunity. So, where we can, we will, and I'm sure there are other things that will come up down the line that we will look to. So we'll keep pursuing new opportunities there. If all debenture non-refundable season ticket commitments come good, what is our financial situation like? How can we survive? So as I mentioned yesterday, we're getting close to the target that we were looking to, that we've set our budget against, and that budget is based on having no fans in next season. So if we do, that's an absolute bonus, but we haven't factored that into our budgeting. So at the moment, the debentures and non-refundable season tickets have been, the response has been fantastic, and we are getting very close to that target. We've obviously haven't gone to general sales yet, and when we do, we hope that will push that over the target, and obviously from a financial point of view, it gives us the budget to get through next year. So we're in a very fortunate position compared to a lot of other clubs. Yeah, very positive there.
Joe, what I suggest is, because quite hard work going rat-a-tat-tat as these questions come at you, so why don't I just give you a 2-minute breather and just give people an update. I mean, hopefully people have seen this on the website yesterday, but I'll just give a brief update on where we are on the physical completion of the stadium, and that gives you the opportunity to mop up some of the questions that are still there, if that's okay. So we had previously, or some time back, had a practical completion date, which means when the contractor, Buckingham, hands the stadium over to us, of the 23rd of October. But actually that date can no longer be met. There are a few things outstanding. For example, the rail seating won't be delivered by the 23rd of October. It will be delivered early in December. And therefore, what we've agreed with Buckingham is that the practical completion date will be a date early in December, when they will hand over the stadium to us, by which time the rail seating will have been installed. The reason the rail seating got delayed was because we held back from confirming the order for it, because we needed to know that the Football Stadia Improvements Fund wouldn't take our grants away, because it wasn't an all-seated stadium, and it took quite a while to get that out of them, but we did get that out of them. And as soon as we got that confirmation, we ordered the rail seating, but not in time to hold the 23rd of October. There are a few other things that need to be done between now and that date in early December, when we take practical completion and hand over. There's a bit of decorating to be done. I think there'll be a bit of finishing off behind some of the stands. There'll be, and the final utilities connections and the testing and commissioning process. It actually takes a few weeks to do the testing and commissioning of a building like this. So there are a few things that will go along in parallel with that. We will take over possession of the stadium from the contractor, practical completion early December, but we will be able to occupy the stadium for matches behind closed doors from Doncaster onwards, 3rd of November, as Joe said, and there is a testing protocol to be gone through behind closed doors in order to make that happen. There are two more substantial things that won't happen by the 7th of December. So one of those is erection of the wall behind the east stand, where we've been having some negotiations with our neighbour on exactly what needs to be in place in the initial phase of the stadium. The final design of the stadium, a 20,000 capacity stadium, the boundary wall will in effect be the back wall of the east stand, the permanent east stand, but to put that in place on a standalone basis while we have a semi-permanent east stand that is further forward, whose back is further forward, is quite an undertaking. So we are agreeing our approach to that, and that will happen over the coming months, over the winter basically. And we will make arrangements such that we can, even when we're not behind closed doors, that we've got a boundary so that we can play in front of fans. And then the other quite substantial thing, although it's actually outside the scope of the construction contract itself, is that we have put in planning permission to have a 5-a-side pitch in the northwest corner of the stadium, and we've put in planning for that. That would be great. It would be a great local facility for the local community, and we've got some benefactors and a grant to fund that, so that isn't a pressure on the stadium budget, which is great. So that will happen over the coming months too. So whereas the wall will happen, is part of the construction contract with Buckingham, and will be during what's called the defects. It's as though it were a snagging item, if you like, that will happen under that contract post handover. We will contract those works for the 5-a-side pitch separately. So that's where we are on the completion of the stadium. Now there are further questions. I wonder if we can actually take some of them, Joe, which is, if there's restricted attendance, restricted attendance, then how will fans be picked to attend those?
So yeah, so again, the way that this was obviously presented with the debenture and the debenture program was that it would be based on an order of priority, which would be debenture plus non-refundable season tickets, and then non-refundable season ticket holders after that. And we have discussed obviously within the DTB about putting an allocated amount for a ballot as well, or outside of that. So that's something that we still need to confirm amongst us in the DTB and PLC. What's the other one? Have you got anything? Have we got plans to do something with the wall behind the south stand? So yeah, we have looked at that. There was I like the idea of putting a projecting a scoreboard on there. It'd probably be the largest scoreboard in the world. But obviously we might fall foul of our neighbours in doing that without planning permission. So yeah, we'll have to wait on that, but do something like that. Any of the club operation at Plough Lane yet? Not yet. We've been living and working out of cabins on site. Obviously, when completion happens at the end of October, we hope that we will be able to utilise the offices. However, again, it just depends on the COVID protocols, because we may have to use the currently proposed office area as a extended changing room. So yeah, we might have to put everyone in boxes for the time being, until we're able to put people back in that office. But yes, we will be from the end of October, hopefully. Can I follow offer any opportunities to increase income other than subscriptions? Not sure at the moment. Certainly there's nothing from the EFL in relation to that. We obviously, it has done, in the sense that we are still able to sell sponsorships and packages because of the LED situation, that we're able to put advertisers on there. So in that sense, it's indirect, but we will keep looking at that. You stated yesterday that sales were 85% of target. Is this the target for debenture sales for Glenn's budget, or was there a target for season ticket sales? That actually yesterday was a total, including debentures and season tickets. It actually works out roughly the same for debentures as well. That is about 85% of the debenture target as part of that. What I did neglect was that what wasn't in that was our season tickets, our debenture sales for hospitality. So that figure is a bit higher. So we are getting closer, but we still need to push on throughout general sales to get that over the line. Will the EFL carry out COVID testing regularly? Well, the EFL don't carry it out. We have to do it on their guidance. As I said earlier, I think they will introduce it back again, probably within the next week or two. I think just as with the rate, the R rate, and the way numbers are, the second wave is increasing again. I can't see how they wouldn't put the testing back in place again. So yes, I think so. So Lauren, back to yours. First question: League One salary cap. So effectively, why we were, from my point of view, and certainly from most clubs' point of view, this is a great opportunity for League One to reset, for all the clubs to reset their finances. And the rationale for 2.5 was that when we did our original projections on the stage in the initial first few years, it was kind of felt that 2.5 million would be where we would be able to sit quite comfortably with all the other expenses that we had. So 2.5 for us made a lot of sense. In terms of like for like, we were well under that obviously last season, and we're yet further under that this season. So we've still got a lot of headroom in terms of being able to get up to that, to hit that 2.5 million budget. Yeah, that's in a sense for us, it's a good number, and it was actually the majority number that most clubs look for. Obviously, some of the bigger ones were a little bit disappointed because they're able to hit numbers much higher than that. But I think it's a sensible number. It's a number that still is able to employ, keep players employable, and because at the moment there are a lot of footballers that haven't been able to get new contracts because it is a very, very tough time. Matches at Plough Lane behind closed doors. I think I've pretty much answered that one, in the sense that it doesn't stop us for behind closed doors. It would only potentially stop us being able to do a test event for crowds. Yeah, we hope to get some form of dispensation at the point when crowds are allowed back. Of course, they're going to have to be able to give us the opportunity to bring crowds in for a test event. percentage of fans are the EFL lobbying for to be back by late November? I don't know the exact number. Someone told me it was around 80%. Oh no, sorry. What percentage of fans are the EFL? Oh, sorry. I don't think they were necessarily lobbying for a particular number. I think they were certainly wanting to get back to that 1,000 that was proposed originally in October. That's what I've heard, is to bring that back in so that we can start the process of testing events again. So I suspect it'll be around 1,000 from what I heard. For the Cedars rewards, I know that Alex Mitchell, who's been volunteering for us, done a fantastic job, really putting a lot of time on this, has obviously been emailing everyone in relation to what people would like on the plaques. This process is really going to start moving now. Obviously want to get those plaques done and put up in the stadium, and also in terms of people's rewards, those will be happening before obviously the year. We want to get those all done and finalised. Would the running cost be too expensive to allow 1,000 fans in by the time you pay it? Well, it's a good question. I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, we need to run this exercise and to really see where we're going to get to. But I think, Tom, we did start to get an initial sort of estimate, didn't we, for where the break-even point was? Do you remember what that was?
Not exactly in terms of numbers, but I think we'd be keen to get people in, particularly if they paid the money on the debentures and the non-refundable season tickets. I think QPR would charge us a lot to do it for just 1,000 at their stadium, but for our stadium, we really should be looking to get people in at 1,000 mark. We should be okay. And we budgeted to have fans in the stadium to a degree, in terms of the running cost of playing matches at a lower level. And that's off the back of hoping to get the people in who bought the non-refundable season tickets in this season. So whilst we've got that revenue, touch wood, coming in still, we've still got to obviously budget for having the expenditure on the running costs. So I would expect us to be able to let 1,000 fans in at our stadium.
Yeah.
I suggest we just take a couple more, Joe. I'm conscious of time, and then we've got a couple of other bits and pieces to move on to. Do you want me to answer? Sorry, just give you a bit of a break. Maybe I'll answer the one about what keeps us awake at night regarding the stadium. Stuart's asked. So less and less is the answer, Stuart. We have our stadium committee meeting every Monday. We run through the same things, and things are gradually getting ticked off. That doesn't mean there's nothing that keeps us awake at night. So it will be good when we have, I've mentioned that wall behind the east stand, when we've got that finally sorted out. That's something that we spend a lot of time talking about. Then one of the impacts of COVID was that this is quite a common refrain, that the utilities companies have a huge backlog, and so the final connections of all the utilities needs to be resolved. Other than that, we managed to find a few extra expenses every single week, that not big things, but just things that, oh, by the way, we just need this, that use up our contingency. So we spend a lot of time just saying, do you really need that? Do you really need that? But I think we're sort of in the last knockings now. I mean, you never know what's going to happen until you get the project manager's report on a Friday evening, and what pleasures you going to have to talk about on Monday. But we have overcome many adversities over the construction build period, and I think we are getting there. And as Joe, so much more of the emphasis now is less on the build and just the making it operate and all that aspect of it, all the various operating plans that Joe referred to earlier that had just been a huge amount of work. Now, are there any, so I think the Cedars one has been answered.
Quite interesting. I just, so obviously, can we look at fans bringing flags and banners to the ground? Absolutely, yes. We've had some discussions with a few people already about banners and flags going to QPR. Obviously, I understand that some of these flags are quite expensive, and I'm just trying to find some comfort from understanding where these items, these flags would be stored, or who would be responsible for them at QPR before we take them over. So we're just trying to get an answer to that. Certainly, when we're playing back at the Plough Lane, absolutely the more the merrier. We will certainly put a call out for that to try and get more items in the stadium to give it that sense that you're all there.
So I'm going to propose that we sort of move on now to a few other things that I've got listed down. I think we have actually, Andy, Joe did say something earlier about the club shop and the pub, although we can't give you a specific date now. But so first thing I'll just mention, moving on from that, is just a bit of an update, which is the museum. If you may remember, there was a members' resolution about the museum, and Wish Wimbledon Sporting History made a presentation to a Don's Trust SGM, I think it was last February. So just to say that we had a meeting between the folk who put in that members' resolution and Wish a month or two ago. I forget exactly how long, and that was quite a good discussion. There were some interesting points. We continue to talk to Wish about their proposals for a museum, and what we decided at the last Don's Trust board meeting is that we should bring that for a discussion to the AGM in December. So nothing is settled yet, but discussions continue, and there is space behind the club shop for a museum in the new stadium. So then another thing just to mention is just this week we have put online the report from Imperial about governance, and I think this came up at the last online open meeting that Imperial had been doing some work. So just a bit of background on this, and I don't think we're going to have an extensive discussion about this tonight, but there are a couple of interrelated things. The first is that when we do move into the stadium, then in effect we will bring to a conclusion a strategy that was put in place 10 years ago to, when there was a strategy process that was launched with full member participation to come up with a strategy, and return to Plough Lane was a key part of that strategy, as well as getting into the Football League and remaining fan owned. Those were, I think, the three main ingredients of the strategy, and being was something about ambition as well. So, come the time we move into the stadium, in effect, that strategy has been delivered. We've been so focused on that, and we need a new strategy. So we've started to talk about a process among the Don's Trust board, and I think so Alistair, who I think we introduced at a previous open meeting, who is a co-opted board member, I don't think is online, but has been doing some work on some thinking about that process and how we get that process going. So we don't have a lot of detail to share with you today, but that is a process that will need to involve the membership clearly. But then in parallel to that, there's a question about governance, which is And governance is this wonderful word, but it basically means just how we run things. I think we all know and all recognise among all of the boards that our governance needs bringing up to date. It was born in an organisation that was, smaller than it is today. And actually, I think apart from just the size of the organisation and its activities, actually, there's just something about the sheer speed at which the club has had to move on a whole range of things over the last few years, that our governance procedures creak at the seams to keep up with the speed at which decisions need to be made. So I think we all recognise that our governance processes could be better and need to be brought up to date. I think there's been a certain, so as part of that process, and this is just a part of this process because the governance process needs to be led by the board and again needs to involve members, but as part of it, we had the opportunity to get a free report basically from a bunch of business students from Imperial College, and so they interviewed some board members and they did as their summer project a project on the governance of AFC Wimbledon, and they presented that report to us. We put that presentation online over recent days. We had to discuss it with them at a board meeting. We discussed it subsequently at a board meeting. I'd say a few things. So, so they did a kind of traffic light system looking at our governance, and there were, I haven't counted, but there were more reds and ambers than there were greens. And the thing I said at the beginning of the board meeting where we discussed that is that we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much about that. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Reason number one is one of the things they said is you don't have a strategy, and the reason we don't have a strategy is because we have been successful in our previous strategy in implementing that, and we should pat ourselves on the back a bit for that, but we need to come up with a new strategy. I think the number two is, AFC, we are a slightly weird organisation. We're not your average football club. We're not your average company. And if to a bunch of MBA students our structure and the way we do things looks a bit weird, then yes, we probably are a bit weird. So I don't think we should be too guilty about that. But on the other hand, I think we all recognise that it needs to move with the times. It needs to be better. Some of the key things that came out of the report are that, first of all, this sort of three-tier board structure where you have the Dons Trust board, you have the AFCW PLC board, and then you have the football club board, is quite cumbersome, and we need a way of, and they did some comparisons with other organisations where 2 tiers is more usual than 3, and I think no one, so there are too many tiers, and there are ways of rationalising that, was one finding. Another thing that came out was that there are an awful lot of people who report to Joe rather than via other people to Joe, and that creates an awful lot of pressure in the system. So it's a very, very flat structure we have, and probably needs to be a bit less flat. I mean, easier said than done, because putting people between Joe and the people who currently report to him involves extra headcount and extra expense. And I'm sure we'd love all of the roles that the Imperial Group recommended, but you can't necessarily afford all of the roles. But nonetheless, there is something about the flatness of the structure and the reporting arrangements. So those are some of the things. In terms of taking the governance forward, we had a few debates. One is can you amend the governance before you do the strategy? And I think the view was that that to an extent First of all, there are probably some no regrets changes to the governance arrangements that just make it work better, that you can do, and that you don't have to get all the way to the end of a strategy process in order to decide on governance. Indeed, you probably need some better governance in order to make the strategy process itself work properly. So there will be a process of sort of considering those recommendations and the ideas we've had ourselves. Some are probably longer term than others, but there's probably some quite simple changes that can be made in the relatively short term that aren't contingent upon future controversial decisions that just make us function better. But some that maybe we need to get further down the who do you want to be type question before you make decisions. So I think that was one thing I wanted to mention, so that's governance and strategy. And then another thing I'd just like to update members on is the election process. So you heard earlier in the meeting from John Dolan, who is the outgoing chair of the election steering group. Enormously grateful to John for the years and years and years he served in that role. But he has stood down from that. We now have a new chair of the election steering group called Alex Folks, who's got a lot of experience of elections. It took a while to bring Alex on board, but he is on board. The election steering group is working, and we do have a timetable for the board elections now. I'm not sure if this is the final one, but basically I think on Saturday you're going to hear more about the opening of the nominations. You'll be contacted, there'll be stuff on the website, etc. And then with a deadline for the 30th of October, deadline for nominations. That'll then the election, whether there'll be an election, will be announced on the 3rd of November. Manifestos will go out on the 7th of November, and the poll will close on the 5th of December, the count shortly thereafter, so that we can do the formal report to the membership at the AGM on the 17th of December. I think there are 5 places going on the board up for grabs, so plenty of roles to play for. And as you've heard earlier during this meeting, there's a constitution to be fixed over the coming year. There is a strategy process of what does the next 10 or whatever years look like. There is a governance review. So, we've got into the stadium, great, fingers crossed. But actually the next year is going to be a really important year for the Don's Trust board too. So there is plenty to play for. So therefore, if you are at all interested in standing for the board, now's your opportunity. I don't know I can't remember what the word count will be on the manifesto or whatever this year. Think about, would you like to stand? What you're going to write in your manifesto? Who you're going to get to propose you, etc. And that's coming up, and that's very important. So I think those are the main. There's a few AOB items that we'll come to, but and I'm conscious I'm 10 minutes past, so I will turn to AOB in a second, and Jane's got a couple of things to say. But just turning to any questions. So there are still questions. I think that's the old group of questions. Locations of the pub shop museum, Nigel. So I can't remember if the plan, we've shared it, that in the past, but I can't remember if that's online anywhere. The pub and the shop and the museum will all be on the ground floor, pretty close to the main entrance in the West Stand. Who will run that pub is a matter of ongoing discussion. So there are various discussions going on that, Peter. I'm not sure in a position to announce that right now. But it isn't a given that it'll be, Wimbledon Brewery. So, are there other questions, or can I turn to AOB, bearing in mind it's 10:15?
Mark, I was just going to jump in and start just a bit of conversation around the pub and some of the questions around that side of things. Obviously, we did the matchday catering, matchday experience survey, which had caterings, bars in, etc. And there were lots of questions around that. And I know the conversations Joe and the club have been having when they're going out to tender and they're talking to different companies. A lot of the questions are reflective, the answers that were given, what people want. There's basically nothing off the table, and I don't think anything is too difficult for us to achieve. I'm not saying that everybody ticked sort of they wanted Chinese meals and we're going to have a Chinese stall, for example. Joe would kill me for saying that, but yeah, it's. I think it's fair to say that the results we've had from the survey, and we've guaranteed we will publish it, but obviously we want to get a bit further along in conversations first with companies before we can say what we can do. But I think it's quite exciting. Looking at what we're going to be offering, and I think that's credit to Joe and the club, and I think it will be really good when we're all allowed back in.
Yeah, Luke, thanks for that. And sorry, we should have talked about the surveys earlier, so thanks for that. So Jane, I'm going to move us on to AOB now. Jane has a couple of AOBs. Jane?
Yeah, nothing too strenuous, just to update members on. We were going to put out a survey for junior dons in October. We're delaying that partly because we did quite an overhaul of their membership, and we wanted to review that. When we did the overhaul, we weren't expecting there not to be crowds and children not to be able to experience their match day experience. So we're going to delay that to an appropriate time. We've got a working group meeting on Monday night of the junior dons, so we'll talk about it there. And then I just wanted to update members on Mandy Bynan and myself were invited along to a Merton hate crime meeting as part of working with Merton Council, and just to let members know that actually they were really impressed with the work that the club is doing in that area. And for those that don't know, we've put ourselves forward for a couple of awards. Well, we've nominated ourselves for a couple of awards around diversity and inclusion with the FSA, and we are waiting on them as to when they will run those awards. Very happy to take any questions that anybody's got on any of those.
Did you mention Merton hate crime, Jane?
Yeah.
You did. Okay, sorry. Okay, do any other board members have any other matters of other business that they wish to bring to members' attention, or indeed Joe or Tom or Michelle? No. Okay, well look, thank you everybody. I mean, just in conclusion, we're getting there, you know, within a few weeks we'll be a really important milestone in this club. It's very exciting. It's obviously been a very difficult year, and thank you for attending virtually. So to have over 100 members present is great. We are learning as we go with these online SGMs. So you know, it's a bit less instant than when we have a show of hands in a physical meeting, and I'm sure it can probably be more interactive and easier to be interactive in a physical meeting. Hopefully it won't be too long before we have an SGM in Plough Lane, but it won't be just yet. And as I said earlier, our AGM will be on the 17th of December. I guess that will be online too. We will see. We will build on the experience of this evening and make that work. So thank you very much for your attendance, and have a good evening, and thank you everybody.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks everyone. Let us know how you thought it went tonight. If more feedback, the better, please, from everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks everyone.